Imagine a laptop with up to 96 GB of VRAM, a 16-core processor, and up to 128 GB of RAM. And now imagine that laptop in the same footprint as a 13.3-inch ultra portable. Well, that sounds pretty impossible, right? Well, you don't have to dream anymore, because I've been using the HP Zbook G1a, and thanks to the new AMD Strix Halo APU, this could possibly be one of the most insane laptops ever made. The amount of things that I can do on this computer compared to my old one really is rather impressive. So let's see what it can do. Hi all, my name is Davis and welcome back to my channel where we talk about all things tech. And today we are going to take a look at one of the most unassuming but also powerful laptops that I have ever used, the HP Zbook G1a. And we are going to see why this might be the ultimate laptop PC for people like me, a content creator, also with an app startup who needs a powerful but portable device for content creation that's also lightweight to take with me on the go. But before I go on, I would also like to thank HP for partnering with me and making this video possible. So what exactly is the Zbook G1a? Well, unlike something from the Envy or OmniBook line, which are premium laptops made for normal consumers, or an Omen computer, which are powerful systems that are mainly made for gamers, the Zbooks are workstation computers, which means that they've got premium but understated looks, incredible build quality, and above all, have incredible performance. Well, the reason why this computer is so hyped is because it's got a revolutionary APU, or system on a chip, which is the AMD Ryzen AI. And you can get up to the Ryzen AI Max Pro 395 with Radeon 8060S graphics. And this whole thing is codenamed the Strix Halo. Now, what's revolutionary about this particular chip, especially for such a compact system like this one, is that unlike with most other laptops where each of the processing units, like the CPU, GPU, and NPU and such are separate, this is a system on a chip design, which means that the CPU and GPU are built around the same chip, which leads to not only a far more compact design, but far less latency as well, and also, most excitingly, the ability to use unified memory. On the G1a, you are actually able to option up 128 gigabytes of unified memory. Like, that's so much on something so small. And up to 96 gigabytes of that memory can actually be allocated to the GPU. And that is wild. So that is absolutely incredible, especially for people who are working with AI, specifically running LLMs on the system. And while my workflow doesn't quite require that, we'll still be seeing this laptop's AI chops on a variety of Adobe tasks. So first up, let's take a look at the hardware. And I do have to say that while this perhaps isn't the most exciting design in the world, it's still a very sleek and understated design that's perfectly designed for the requirements of the customer base. So the chassis and the lid of the laptop is constructed of aluminium, and it's finished in a meteor silver color, which looks a little bit like a gunmetal gray. And as we can see by me twisting it, there's no creaks at all. The chassis is very sturdy and also displays very little flex. And the finish is relatively resistant to fingerprint, which is fantastic. There's nothing worse than a very fingerprinty professional laptop. Imagine seeing a client with fingerprints on your laptop. You wouldn't want that. Considering that this computer is a portable workstation with the performance to match, it's kind of amazing how compact they managed to make this whole thing. This entire computer just weighs 1.57 kilograms, and it's just 1.8 centimeters thick. And while of course there are computers like the OmniBook that we've tested before that are a little bit more compact, for this level of performance that you are getting, it really is quite remarkably thin, with so much performance in such a small size. So taking a look at the design, the lid is very minimal indeed. There's literally only the HP logo on here, which I absolutely adore. And on the bottom, we can see that the feet are rather large and sturdy, and there's also a massive grille over here that sort of hides the massive fans and vapor chamber that keeps everything feeling nice and cool. For a 14-inch laptop as well, there's an impressive amount of ports. So on the left, we have a full-size HDMI 2.1 port, which is good. We've got a USB-C port with up to 10 gigabits a second of speed. We've also got a Thunderbolt 4 port with up to 40 gigabits a second, and also a headphone/mic combo jack. It's great to see that this hasn't been deleted yet. And on the other side, we've got a Kensington lock. We've got another Thunderbolt 4 port, which is very fun, and also a USB-A port supporting up to 10 gigabits a second. Now, I really wish that we could have gotten rid of USB-A for now. We've had USB-C for 10 years or so, I think. But the reality is that so many of our peripherals still use USB-A, so it's still really quite a nuisance to have a computer that's limited to just USB-C. So I do applaud HP for still including this. And now this is the exciting bit, because with this particular computer, I'm very glad to say that you can lift the lid with just one finger. I mean, why doesn't every laptop do this? It's just so obvious. And despite that feature being apparent, the hinge is still impressively firm, it's not wobbly or going anywhere. So under the top bezel, we've got a 5 megapixel camera that's actually compatible with Windows Hello. And I do have to say that it's quite possibly one of the best webcams that I've seen on a laptop. This is the webcam of the HP Zbook G1a. And luckily on the 14-inch display, there is no notch or weird cutout or anything annoying like that. And it comes with HP's Polycamera Pro AI webcam software, which I do have to say is among the best in the business. And like with all good business laptops, there's also a physical cover on here as well, so you can protect your privacy. And under the webcam, you've got a choice of display. When I attended the launch event for this laptop, the units had one of the most beautiful OLED displays that I had ever seen. 14 inches in size with a 2880 by 1800 resolution, covering 100% of the DCI-P3 spectrum, a 120 Hz refresh rate, which was also multi-touch enabled. And I was planning to talk about how it was the perfect display for content creation like Photoshop, Lightroom, Premiere Pro, stuff like that. Unfortunately, however, on my test unit here today, I don't have that display. Instead, I have the 1920 by 1200 anti-glare LCD display with just 60 Hz. Now, don't get me wrong, it's still a very nice display indeed. It's very decent. It's got the same 16 by 10 aspect ratio, which I do prefer. And I do think that this might be the display to get if you are not a creative, as an LCD display can be easier on the eyes for some people, and you do eliminate the possibility for burn-in, however minimal that might be. But I feel that when you are paying so much for a premium experience like this, that if you are going for this laptop, just get the OLED display, as it is simply one of the best displays that I've ever seen on a computer. And the LCD is just merely okay. It's good. Okay, so let's get back to some more positive things. Yeah, so the speakers that adorn the side of the keyboard, they are pretty nice and loud. And the keyboard itself is one of the nicest keyboards that I've ever felt on a laptop. It feels quite similar to the Omnibook's keyboard that I tested last year, and it simply has the nicest and most premium feeling damping of any keyboard, I believe. I would say that if you can, try it out in a store, because it simply feels incredible. Now, this does sound a little bit silly as well, but this is also among my favorite of all the fonts that you see on a laptop. And also the backlighting is super premium looking with absolutely minimal bleeding. Like, looking at it from a normal angle, there is barely any bleeding to the lighting at all. The trackpad is also one of the best dive board trackpads that I've ever used on a laptop. The texture is silky smooth. The response is also great. It responds really nicely to multi-touch gestures, as we can see. Just a little point though, I do wish that it did have the haptic trackpad from the Omnibook, as that did feel even better. But as someone who taps more than clicks on a trackpad, that hasn't been a massive issue for me. And one last point about the hardware, I do have to say that it is very nice that they did decide to round all the edges of the laptop. So when you are typing along, you aren't cutting yourself on the laptop edge like you do on some other brands. Okay, so the hardware design certainly is quite impressive, but obviously the main point of this laptop is performance. So let's take a look at that. Now, like with the display, unfortunately, I don't have the absolutely top in line model here. So instead of the 16-core Ryzen AI Max Plus Pro 395 with 16 cores and the Radeon 8060S graphics, I have the slightly more subdued 390 processor with 12 cores and the Radeon 8050S graphics. And also, instead of 128GB of unified memory, I only have 64GB on this unit, which, to be fair, is still twice that of my daily laptop that I usually use. And there's 1TB of storage on this unit, but the NPU is the same on all of the units with 50 NPU tops. So let's just get the benchmarks out of the way. And since this is such a new system, I don't believe that everything is properly optimized yet, but they still are quite impressive. So let's first begin with my favorite gaming benchmark, Forza, which is quite a difficult and not very well optimized game. So I've got a full grid of cars with full weather effects, as in a thunderstorm, and it's also nighttime at Spa-Francorchamps. So it is an absolute nightmare scenario for the computer, running at 1200p ultra settings. So let's see what sort of performance we get. So we're beginning here with roughly 40 frames a second, hovering around that mark. So we can see that, roughly speaking, 40 frames a second is as low as you are going to get on this computer. And when the grid begins to settle, we are approaching 50. So while I got around 40 to 50 frames a second on ultra settings, when I tried it later at high settings, I got a full locked 60 frames a second. So that is pretty impressive for a laptop so small. And if you are concerned about heat, the vapor chamber works pretty well at keeping all of that heat away from your fingers. At full blast, as we can see in this footage, on the worst possible scenario, on a very warm 29-degree day, the palm rest remained fairly cool at 35 degrees, with the keyboard a little bit warmer at around 45 degrees, and the warmest section of the laptop was around 50 degrees, where all the heat escaped from the top of the vents. And I didn't see any notable signs of throttling in my tests as well. So it's quite impressive on that side. And as I usually make content about mobile phones, I am a big fan of Geekbench. So let's see what it got in Geekbench 6. So as we can see, in high performance mode. So for Geekbench 6, on the CPU score, it got 2635 single core and over 16,000 multi-core, which is very decent for a laptop of this size, but I would love to see what the full fat version of this processor would have gotten. And also, when unplugged, I redid the test and there was only a very minor dip in performance. And now let's have a look at the GPU. So we got a Vulkan score of almost 54,000, which isn't bad, and also an OpenCL score of 64,934. In Cinebench R23, which apparently is the preferred benchmark of non-mobile phone reviewers, it got a multi-core score of 23,544 and a single core score of 1,924. And all these figures puts this laptop at very much of the pointy end of the 14-inch performance-oriented laptop machine category. So how does that performance apply to the real world though? So as an entrepreneur who needs to make a lot of photo and video content for my app startup, and also as a technology content creator, I heavily rely on the entire Adobe suite, or at least it feels like the entire Adobe suite. And performance in apps like Premiere Pro and also Lightroom truly is very important for me. And luckily, this is rather good at that. In fact, the performance of the Zbook has been so impressive that I've been able to do things that I could never do on my old computer, especially the new AI features in the Adobe suite. So let me show you what the performance looks like, while we also test the NPU, which is 50 tops of power, and then we can test it while utilizing a variety of Adobe's AI tools. Obviously, not all of these tasks use the NPU, as some of it still use the cloud, but you sort of get the idea. So we've got one layer of 4K footage over here, and it comes from a Sony Cinema camera, so it's a little bit difficult for the computer to handle, but as you can see here, everything plays super easily. And then we've got another layer of sort of the overlay, which comes from another 4K camera, and the computer handles that very easily indeed. Let's just go in a random place in the timeline, like here, and without rendering, it's instant. Everything on this computer is instant. So let's have a look at some of Adobe's AI tools. So one of the more exciting ones that have happened recently is called Generative Extend. And it basically, it is what it sounds like. So just say I've got this clip over here, and it's of me playing this gaming console thing. Okay, so with this magic wand-like button over here, I can just take the end of this clip like so, and just extend it by 2 seconds. So what it does is that it analyzes the end of that clip and then hopefully takes that data and extends it by 2 seconds. One good example of using Generative Extend might be, just say you're shooting a feature film and then you've got a shot of an actor looking out into the distance and you just want 1 extra second of that. So instead of having to get the whole crew together again and spend $1 million or whatever reshooting the scene, you can use this feature to extend the scene with AI. So let's see what it's come up with. And we can see over here, and this is the extended bit now. And it looks basically exactly the same as the actual video. You can't even tell that it's AI. I'm so excited that I can finally include this in my workflow. Some other AI features that you could use on this particular computer. Just say that the sound quality of my video is absolutely deplorable. Okay, so I've got this clip over here. It uses the scratch audio, so it sounds absolutely terrible. Let's have a listen to it.
Triple or double A is luckily. It's just a lithium-ion battery, which means it's rechargeable. And while the design is very cool, I think
it sounds terrible. So what we can do is use the enhanced speech to enhance the sound. And fingers crossed, it will sound great.
Is very cool. I think what impressed me more than anything else is the build quality. Remember, it's a very affordable console, but this material sort of feels like that really high quality polycarbonate that we saw on Nokia Lumia devices. Everything just feels really, really solid. There's no creaks and squeaks. All the buttons feel really reassuring as well, and they are rather tactile too.
So you can hear from me just switching it on and off. It almost sounds like that I don't need a proper microphone anymore. I can just use scratch audio. So using AI in sort of that field is very fun indeed. And obviously there's more AI features like auto color and stuff like that, but I want to show you just one more on Premiere Pro. Okay, so one of the best features I would say with Premiere Pro is the automatic captioning. So I'm sure we are all familiar with this. So what you do is that you take your clip like so, and get the transcript feature to do your transcript. And what's fun is that obviously you can create your captions like so, and it automatically creates the captions with very little effort. I mean, that's brilliant. But now we can take it to the next level. Because just say, what if I want to make my videos appeal to the Italian market? Well, with the power of AI in Adobe Premiere Pro, I can change my language over here from English, and I can change it to, okay, it's not quite Italian. Let's pick Filipino. And we can translate it. And I can turn my English subtitles off, and then make the Filipino one big. And now we can see that my subtitles are in Filipino, which is just fantastic, isn't it? Look at that. All with the power of AI and 50 tops of power. But obviously my work isn't just in video, because I also occasionally like to travel and I get a lot of travel images. Obviously this is just a fun example. I don't actually do this for work. So this is a picture that we took on a cruise, and Lightroom now has some incredible features that utilize the NPU. So let's have a look at that. So we can see that this is just a normal picture taken on my old Olympus. And if we press develop like so, something that I'm really excited about is the fact that we can mask objects really easily. Like, remember how we used to have to do an outline around an object, or we used our paintbrush tool and just splodged different effects on? Now with the power of AI, we can just press here, and the subject, as in me, I'm selected, and then I can just like make myself brighter like so. Isn't that just fantastic? So I can just make myself a little bit brighter. And then let's add another mask. Let's say the sky. The sky is it's actually quite not overexposed, surprisingly. And now we can see that I can just separate myself and the sky for some reason from the rest of the image and adjust it accordingly and make it absolutely hideous. Okay, so we got that feature a few years ago, but quite recently, AI has taken my Lightroom experience to the next level. Let me show you two particular features that I am quite excited about. So this first one is quite intensive on the NPU, and you will see why. So it's called lens blur. So as you can see over here, the background of this image is slightly blurry, and that's because I've got a very fast prime lens. But what if I want to make it look like I spent $10,000 on my lens and not just 1,000? What if I got like a really, really wide aperture lens, like an f1 or something? Well, I can fake that effect. I can go into my lens blur section, and now I can apply it. And now the NPU is analyzing the image and creating a depth map, which is quite exciting indeed. It's just a 2D image. There's no depth information there at all. Okay, so we've got the depth map now, and we can sort of see, and we can press here, we can visualize the depth. So it knows that I'm the foreground. It knows that the ground over here, it graduates. It's not just a clean, foreground and background map. And we can see that it gets even further away. Like the sky over here is further away than the ship. So that's very cool indeed. And using that information, we can do stuff like, we can really blur the background. So it looks like that I've got like an f/0.7 lens or something like that. I can even do things like pick which part of the image I want to blur out. So I can choose the foreground like I'm crazy and blur myself out. So I have totally ruined that image, but as we can see, the lens blur feature is quite incredible. Something that you might use more often than that is that if I zoom in really close, we can see that this image is a little bit noisy. I've used a micro four thirds sensor, so it's not the biggest sensor in the world, but let's try to reduce that level of noise, shall we? So what we can do is go into detail over here, and we can use a brand new AI feature called noise reduction. So we can press this denoise button over here. And so this is the original. We can see that it is, if we zoom in a little bit more, it is a little bit noisy. But what I can do is I can increase the noise reduction. Let's just make it extreme. I'll go all the way. And if I undo, redo, we can see that all that noise is disappearing without too much of the detail going as well. Now this is quite astonishing. On a similar thing as well, we can use a super resolution mode to actually use AI to increase the resolution of the image. So we're going from something that looks like perhaps 20 megapixels all the way up to around 50. And we can sort of see the difference in detail over here. And obviously the data isn't actually there. We need AI to actually create this new data, and it works remarkably well. If we look at my eye over here, we can see additional detail being created. It is quite cool indeed. So let's enhance it, and now the entire image is going to be enhanced. So look at that. I've changed the depth of field, and I've also increased the resolution. What an amazing day for AI. So as you can see, as someone who needs to create high quality video and photo content, I do have some quite demanding needs when it comes to my computers. So traditionally, I have needed to use a large desktop or desktop replacement laptop to get the performance that I need. However, the performance that the AMD Ryzen AI Max Pro APU has done has really made my workflow actually usable on such a small, compact package like this HP Zbook Ultra G1a. It really is quite incredible indeed. So I hope that you enjoyed my tour of the laptop and you can see just how much I've enjoyed using it with my workflow. Again, I would like to thank HP for partnering with me and making this video possible. If this is a laptop that you are looking at, I would love to hear your thoughts and questions in the comment section below as well. Otherwise, feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't done so yet. And until next time, I hope that you are having an amazing day, and toodaloo.